Welcome to Little Home Projects. In this video, I'm going to be using surface-mounted wiring to tap this light to add an additional work light as well as a new security light. I've got an area on my property that is quite dark and shaded at night. None of the street lights reach this area, so I need to add a spotlight to keep people from approaching my house. The plan is to access the lighting from the light that's already in the carport, add a new additional work light above my workstation, and then add a new security light at the edge of the carport. I have everything that I'm going to need for this project. I'm going to be using armored cable for almost all of it. The armored cable means that I can surface mount on the roof. I'm going to be using a drop-down metal box so that I can access my wires and attach my cables to that. That'll attach to the metal box that's already in the roof, and I'll need 2 more boxes for each of the new lights. I'm going to be using these clamps to hold the armored cable into the box, and as well as these mounts to secure the armored cable to the roof. To access the wires, I need to take off my existing carport light. I've already turned off the breaker to make sure there's no power here, but I always use my tester before sticking my fingers in any electrical box. With that all clear, I'm safe to keep going. I need to completely remove this light. I'm going to be installing a new box on top of this box, and then I'll be reattaching the light to that. The way the extension box attaches is simple. If we imagine that we're looking up at the ceiling instead of down at the table, you'll see that the box that's mounted in the ceiling already has 2 screw points. The extension has a spot for those to attach to the old box. Now this new box is sitting proud of the ceiling. I can use the armored table clamps to attach it here to the new box. I just make sure to feed my wires through the middle of the new extension box, clip in one of the screw holes, line up the second, tighten it down, and my new box is attached. Here's a good view of what it looks like attached. You can see the wires just fit through the back. The new extension box is attached here, and that it's quite solid once it's down tight. You have a good wiggle, it's not going anywhere. I'm going to make my armored cable attached to the side. It's going to come out at an angle to that box. That's because I need to have my wires jut to the side because that's where I have a rafter. I used a nail to poke through the holes in my soffit to just find where my rafters were. Mine was about 6 or 8 inches off to the one side, and I'll have to make sure my wire's attached securely there. I want about 6 or 8 inches of wire sticking out of the edge of my armored cable. You can twirl this stuff off from one spot, but there's a bit of a trick to working with it. If you give it a good hard bend where you want to cut, the armor will pop out. You can then untwist it from this point, giving you a spot to cut from. Using a pair of snips, I'm using my tin snips, that's all I had. Any kind of wire snips or something here will be able to cut that off, and you can access the wire. You want to be careful not to cut the plastic insulation off of the wire, and I like to clean up the edges of this, just cutting it down nice and flush so it's not too sharp. Something else that's a must when working with armored cable is you have to put in one of these anti-shorts before you put in the clamp. They're just a little plastic or vinyl insulator that just goes in between the wires and the armor coating itself. My thinking is that it just keeps the jagged edge of the armor from cutting into the wires. I'm going to attach the clamp down here rather than doing it on the ladder and get a better shot of it doing it that way. It's easy enough to just slide the clamp down over top of the armor, loosen off the clamp a bit to make sure it fits in nicely, and you see as it fits in you can see a little tab of the anti-short poking through the hole. That way if you're ever getting an electrical inspection you can tell that you have the proper anti-short in there. It is required. Now you can tighten this down. You want to tighten it enough so that it won't ever come out, but you don't need to worry about crushing the wire. I'm going to also show you how to knock out and attach this to the box itself. It's easier to see it on the camera down here. Each of these little round things are on just little metal tabs and they just punch right out. Once it's bent, you can grab it with a pair of pliers and just wiggle it back and forth and twist until it comes out. With that out, you just slip the wire and the clamp through the hole, and then the washer nut that comes with the clamp, it is meant to be a friction fit, so once you get it tight, it shouldn't come out again. So I'm not going to tighten it down too much here because I want to get it off to be able to attach it to the top. A couple taps with the screwdriver in the tightening direction will mean that it won't come out anymore. One other thing is when you install this clamp into the box, make sure that this tightening screw is in a spot you'll be able to access it. For me, it'd be the left or the right. I repeat these exact same steps and install the armored cable into the new box. In my area, I believe the code is that all wire has to be mounted within 12 inches of the box, so I found the closest point with a solid mounting point and made sure that was close enough, and attached using the metal brackets. I didn't tighten it all the way up just yet. I wanted to keep it loose while I was still getting the rest of the wire attached. I decided to put additional brackets about every 2 feet just to keep it nice and clean. I made sure to leave this one loose also so that I could adjust if needed down the road. At the far side of my carport, I used one of the boxes to line up where I wanted to install my new light fixture. I used a marker to draw around the shape. I used a razor knife, or a box cutter, to start to cut open the vinyl. This is actually a bit more difficult than I thought it was going to be. I ended up having to push pretty hard. I was trying to just go nice and slow, but before you knew it, I broke through and cut a big chunk out of the ceiling. So much for a nice clean cut. This was much more difficult than I expected it to be, and I ended up not paying attention to the cutting as well as I should have, and I found that I ended up cutting it much too large, a full ½ inch too large. I just didn't follow that through the way I should have, but the damage is done, so now I'm going to try and clean it up as much as possible. So that took me quite a while, and I think I did a pretty bad job. It's pretty mangled. This is supposed to be a circle, and as you can see, it is not. So it is large enough for the box to fit in, and it will be not too noticeable, but I definitely could have done better. I think if I were to try and do this again, I'd probably go get a hole saw about 4 inches, which I probably have somewhere and just didn't think to grab. For now, I can continue with installing the light. I don't need to use an extension for this one. I'm just going to mount the box directly to the wood, and it'll be nice and solid that way. I roughly placed the wire through the hole so I knew how long I'd want it and make sure that it was all going to fit. I drew a mark on the armored cable about a ½ inch longer than I need. That gives me a little bit of play if something needs to be loosened up, and I can always pull more off if I need to. I then removed the armored cable from the box, took it back down the ladder, and was able to cut it to length. I repeated the same steps before, bending the armor to break it so that I'm able to get the armor off the wire where I need it to be, then cutting it to length. I attached my clamp, making sure the anti-short was inside already. With that attached, I can bring the armor back up to the top and lock it into the box. Unfortunately, there wasn't any wood backing where I wanted to put the light in the soffit, so I've decided to put it to the edge of the carport instead. This will work just the same, and it'll be just as protected. I mounted one end of the armored cable to the newly attached electrical box. This way it gives it a nice fixed point for me to work the wires from. I'll come back and attach the wires to the light later once everything is done. I did a rough dry fitting of the armored cable to make sure that it was going to be the right length with all the bends and things that it needs to fit where I want it to fit. After cutting and mounting the clamps, I'm able to attach it to the electrical box. With all of the wires installed, it's time to start connecting the lights back up. I'm going to start at the beginning, where I took the first light down, reattaching it. The wiring diagram is really simple. Because I'm just continuing this power through, I want to make sure I include all the blacks together, including the black of the light, all the whites together, including the light's white wire, and all the grounds. Here's a close-up of the wire diagram, all the whites together, all the blacks together, and all the grounds. Doing it this way means the power can go to the light, as well as going past the light to the next light. That way this light doesn't have to be on for the power to go through. It's the exact same wiring diagram for the other lights as well, with the only exception of the last light not having any additional wires to continue on with the power. With all that done, and the new lights installed, I just wanted to make sure that my armored cable was mounted properly to the ceiling. I positioned my armored cable so that it would have a nice gentle curve in it, nothing too strenuous for the armor, and then moved on to securing it. I continued down the line on the rest of the armored cable as well, to just make sure that there was a mount every 2 feet or so. This cleaned it up nicely and got rid of any sagging that was happening on the wires. With that, I'm finished the project. I think that going with the armored cable over running conduit was a good choice for me, and the visibility of the wire isn't really an issue. I stopped noticing that the wire was there almost right away. If I were to do something different, I would go ahead and pick already painted white electrical boxes just to add to the overall aesthetic, but it's not really necessary. The position of the light worked out well. It cast a really nice light into the area that I needed. The area where I butchered the hole into the soffit turned out to be okay as well. Once the wires were attached, you really don't know that it's not a perfect circle. Installing your own lights like this, surface mounting the wires, is actually quite a practical idea for a homeowner. Running the wires through the carport attic would have been a lot more work. This is really simple. This is a project I think any homeowner can take on. This is Little Home Projects. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos, I put out a new video each week. Hit the subscribe button. And thanks for watching.